Liana, what is this? I could see you asking it. What is this? Well, they're symbiotes, guys. They're symbiotes from the Marvel Universe. And I figured you guys are gamers, so you would appreciate an image like this. And I want to talk about the concept of symbiotic diversity in gaming, because this whole diversity in gaming thing is a big hot button, and I don't want to make it a fight, right? Okay? And I want to talk about the different sort of modes of diversity, the different ways to go about thinking about it. And how I think the current way we've been discussing it is leading to a lot of unnecessary fighting, and so I want to offer some alternatives. Okay? Right now, we have what I'm calling a parasitic version of diversity. This idea that the host has to weaken for the parasite to thrive. And I found this picture of this poor dog that is apparently the most infested dog in the whole world. I mean, this isn't a good method for the parasite or the host. It makes you itchy and miserable, and you start gnawing on your own leg, and that's taking away from completely good time you could spend licking your own scrotum, right? I'm using a dog metaphor, obviously, but if you can lick your own scrotum, good for you. And this is sort of when we talk about diversity in games lately. This has sort of been the metaphor, this idea that gamers are over and it doesn't have to be your audience. And, this idea that there are these waves of interlopers, of all these, parasites coming in and taking over gaming. And it's starting to sound like the beginning of Bioshock, doesn't it? The parasite does not ask. But this is sort of the way diversity has been pushed on gaming. That the idea that it has to be unpleasant or that everyone has to sort of suffer a little bit for the greater good. And I completely disagree. That's not the way diversity in a well-functioning system works. There are two other forms of diversity in nature, of symbiotic relationships in nature. Isn't that cool? This is cool. Like, look at this tongue. It's awesome. I love this planet. But anyway, there's sort of me right there. That's the Liana symbiote. Yeah, it's red, and there's obvious boobs. But one is mutualism, and this is what I think diversity in gaming is actually in real practice, and it's going to be more and more and more this way as we go forward. As you can see, mutualism is the way two organisms of different types of gamers exist in a relationship which each individual benefits from the activity of the other. Similar interactions within a species are known as cooperation. Now, the reason I'm calling this mutualism instead of cooperation is because if we think of, various types of gamers as species, we've got the core gamers now, the hardcores, the people who consider ourselves gamers. We're not really the same species as somebody who plays Candy Crush Saga a lot, are we? We're not the same species as someone who plays The Sims. There's some overlap in Minecraft, but even something like Minecraft, I would say, is a different thing. I would say that MMOs are a different species of game. And we call this genre, and I always have an issue with calling something genre in game, because a genre is it a mystery? Is it science fiction? Is it horror? That doesn't tell you how the game plays, right? Because you can have a horror setting and it's survival horror, or it's action horror, or it's, kind of a gothic horror thing that we'd get in, a game I really like, a game called Clive Barker's Undying. That's not really, it's not survival horror. It used to be we could just make horror games, and it was that old classic, like that was like Victorian style horror, or gothic horror, or all that stuff. And I think that a mutualistic approach to diversity in gaming, both in terms of genre, meaning we stop thinking about, everybody's got to make open world games, or everybody's got to make shooters, or everybody's got to make whatever as this dominant thing. I mean, the new upcoming thing it seemed from E3 is roguelikes. The word roguelike was dropped a bazillion times. It was like, why are there so many? Well, because we're still functioning on this idea of parasites where we suck all there is out of one host and then we move on to another. No, it's a much more sustainable model to have, a decent level of RPGs per year, and a decent level of shooters, and a decent level of open world games, and a decent, number of those good old fashioned adventure platforming games that people like. People just get burned out when there's too much of something. And you remember when everything was a shooter and now like nothing's a shooter? And I'm sitting here going, you know what? I'd really like to play a shooter with living room co-op so I can play it with my husband. Because the thing that makes shooters so appealing is they're easy. And so he can just pick up and play. There's only like 2 or 3 basic controls he really needs to know. He needs to know how to shoot, and he needs to know how to reload. Even like the grenades, he doesn't really have to do because I'm playing with him. And that it's exciting, a lot goes on, and he likes it. Well, try to find a living room co-op, a couch co-op shooter now. There's precisely one this season, Gears of War Ultimate Edition. Not even Halo is a couch co-op game anymore. Why? Because the big parasitic paradigm in gaming right now is 60 frames per second. So Halo sacrificed couch co-op because it would interfere with 60 frames per second. And some people think, good, hate co-op. Well, that's fine. But that's parasitic. It's killing off one thing to please another group. And unfortunately, that has to happen with design choices sometimes. But I think that if we take a different approach to diversity, more of a mutualistic approach, we could say, well, can we turn off the 60 frames per second for couch co-op? Does the game have to run at 60 FPS in split screen? Well, no, it doesn't really have to. If that's an important feature for someone, it can still run in 60 frames, in single player mode and in multiplayer mode, but it doesn't have to run that way in co-op mode. That's more mutualistic. You've got 2 different needs feeding off each other. Now, that's one type of diversity in games. I have not talked about the other type of diversity in games, which is diversity of players. And, the whole thing, women and people of color, and you know how I feel about the people of color designation, right? It's stupid. What we're talking about is different player groups, because, when you talk about people of color in gaming, we're not going to call Asian people a minority in gaming, okay? 2 of the 3 major console developers are Japanese. Like, could you imagine going to Nintendo and saying, how would you like to get people of color in gaming? Have you looked at who makes Nintendo games? They're all what we'd consider people of color. It's not the same paradigm in Japan. And so what we've got now with diversity in games in terms of types of people, women gamers and, Asian gamers and black people gamers and brown people gamers and all this stuff, these are kind of artificial groups when it comes to games. But, we have this thing called commensalism, which is an organism sort of going about its business, sort of latching onto gaming, having a symbiotic relationship with gaming without affecting the host, the core base of gamers. And so, we have these, little indie games that try to tell a minority experience, but it really doesn't impact. There's sort of, this is how indie started, that we're going to tell our own games. Well, okay, you're coming in and you're benefiting from the massive player base on something like Steam or something like that. But this make your own game concept doesn't really mutually benefit, right? It doesn't really mutually benefit gaming as a whole. That's why I like this mutualism argument, the idea that, okay, there's got to be a way that we can do this I need diverse games attitude. And we want to bring in different types of gamers, where it's seen as something that's going to benefit everyone involved instead of everyone fearing the parasite, right? It's like the hummingbird and the flower. right? It's like the clownfish. It's more like that. It's okay, people are gonna come in and they're different, but what they're adding is something beneficial to gaming because they're coming in and they're doing something good. They're not harming us. They're not giving us mange. We need to take this image out of our head, the mange, the ticks, the heartworm, and the fleas, and the ear mites, and everything like that. No. New ideas coming into gaming are not fleas, guys. Like, oh, Momo's leaving because we're talking about this stuff. Sorry, Momo. Yes, we sorted that problem out with you when we got you. Yes, Momo has trauma. But mutualism is more the hummingbird, and the flower. And this is far too peaceful on imagery for gamers, and I understand that. Well, that's a little better. That's at least kind of cool. There's the clownfish. We have to be like this. And dogs and sheep, that's a good one. I like the hummingbird though, because it's just so cheesy. But really, what we want to be is something cool like this. Yeah. All right, but let's go back to the mutualism phase. I think this is possible. I think that if we stop thinking about experimental games as parasites that are taking something away, and we start thinking about them as two species existing in a relationship with each benefiting, then everything's going to settle down, and everybody's going to stop worrying, and everybody's going to stop trying to yell the loudest so that they're the give me all the things. It's almost like a resource hoarding mechanic that's going on. Right now in gaming, it's actually like gaming's this poor dog that's trying to pretend nothing's going on, and every little different type of gamer are these different parasites trying to fight for dominance over this freaking poor beagle. And what's going to eventually happen? The host is going to weaken and get sick. And that's sort of our model, and it's silly. It's really silly because it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, say this, like Minecraft is a classic example of a game that is a mutualistic entry to gaming, right? Minecraft became this huge thing. But did very many people stop playing other things to play Minecraft? Not really. Minecraft attracted a different kind of player, right? And so Minecraft was sort of its own little thing, but it was very dominant in its own way. And relax, there are people that play Minecraft and other things, but Minecraft also brought in a lot of players, especially younger players, that only play Minecraft. And because Minecraft is very time consuming, and I don't know how you'd necessarily play that in anything else. But, if you still enjoy other games, maybe you play Minecraft for a while and then you go back to another sort of game, and then it's kind of like the way I am with The Long Dark right now. I'll play whatever game I have to review, and then I'll go play a bit of a Long Dark because I'm obsessed with shooting wolves in the face. But Minecraft brought in this base, and then what happened? We were at E3 this year, and all of a sudden here's Minecraft being used to show the HoloLens, which is obviously a core early adopter piece of technology. So in that case, a game like, Minecraft, who brought people in who otherwise, their parents may not let them play games because they're violent. And violence is bad, even though there's no scientific proof of that. They're allowed to play Minecraft. And so now you've got this next generation of gamers who's now being pulled in to sort of core tech, early adopter tech, through something like Minecraft. That's a mutualistic, beneficial relationship for this new type of game. Now, nobody thinks anything of a new game coming in, right? Nobody thinks of a new type of game coming in and going, shooters are dead. Shooters don't have to be your audience. But isn't that essentially what every new paradigm does? Shooters are over. Well, for some people they are. It's like shooters became oversaturated and adventure games came back. But I remember at a time, adventure games are over. Adventure games are over. It's all shooters. It's all Doom clones, as we called them back in the day. Doom clones. And it's like, Doom? Isn't that new game coming up? No, Poppets. Doom is a very, very old franchise. Come sit at my knee, youngins, and let me tell you a tale of bygone eras. Um, and, it is this idea. But so when we switch this to actually people, the reason I quoted like shooters are over, shooters don't have to be your audience, is that's the way we think about actual human diversity in games. And it's so dumb because the overlap of, types of games has ebbed and flowed and nothing ever went away. I mean, the resurgence in point and click adventures is proof positive of that. I mean, I never thought I'd see those games come back, and I'm very happy they did because I used to play the old ones. And then, Quest for Infamy seemed to sort of be the one that opened the floodgates, that game did decently, and people are like, yeah, that was really fun, that was great. And so we got all these other things, and then of course tablets as well. The point and click adventure games are just perfect on tablets. So things change, but it's mutually beneficial, right? No one has to go away, no one has to lose for new people to come in. Gaming is still a growth industry, which means that extra space is being made for people all the time. Now, the barriers to entry in gaming are getting much higher because of the consolidation of publishers and the fact that, if you're an indie game, you have to go through the Steam system. But, that doesn't mean that, and I don't know how Steam Greenlight works, but that doesn't necessarily mean that white people only or brown people don't know, right? So I think that the urge towards diversity is a good thing, because all it just means is different types of people, no matter what you mean by that, whether it be gender or race or living experience or socioeconomic bracket or whatever. I think we need to stop false separating this stuff, because it does matter. I mean, I love getting perspectives from people in different parts of the world and come from different backgrounds, because you know what? They make valid points based on their own experience. But we get so bent on things like race and things like gender. And that's why I like talking about it, because I think if we talk more about it, it becomes less scary and people have experiences talking about these things without being yelled at. And so, instead of it being, you're making me itchy, go away, my ears itch, or beautiful hummingbird, pastoral scene, we can all enjoy the badassery that is video games. Like, could you imagine, like, the kids who are playing Minecraft now, suddenly they're going to discover that something like this exists in games, and they're going to be like, whoa, that's badass. And they're like, yeah, it is badass. And maybe you'll find up another term for badass, and then you'll, like, make up your own word. And that's the way it works, So, the reason I keep talking about this, and the reason I won't, drop the tag when it comes to the other elements of my identity that aren't gamer, is I don't believe that, say, my concern about gay rights or my concern about civil rights, or and by civil rights, I mean racial civil rights, and my concerns about class and economic inequality and, feminism, and I mean, I could call it women's rights or women's issues, but feminism's the term, and I want people to stop thinking of it as a parasite and start thinking it of the flower that the hummingbird is drinking. Like, look, the flower looks kind of like a vagina, and the hummingbird could be vaguely phallic. There's no need to be scared. Okay, there's no need to be scared, because there are those of us who are happy to have these conversations. And I mean, when you're cutting through the noise, guys, this is the amazing thing. When you're cutting through the noise of the crazy things that get circulated on the internet, because what gets circulated on the internet? This. Pretending to be this. Right? Because everybody wants to be badass, but really are this things that give you an itchy ass. I know, I'm being kind of goofy about it, because I want to keep it light and I want to keep the positivity up. But at the core of everything, the people out there doing the real work, they're actually out there trying to figure out exactly what's going on. People are interviewing women who are really in games. The findings that are starting to come out are very interesting. I haven't really had an opportunity to talk about it yet because I want us to get to sort of a good place where people are able to listen, right? I don't want it to be something where people feel threatened. I want it to be something where people are in a position where they can hear the stuff that might sound like something they've had a bad experience with before. Because I really do get that. From my own experience, I know there's some people that I just have a really hard time listening to when they remind me that, oh yeah, you're part of that, just because I've had bad experiences, right? So I get that and I understand that, and I don't want to push people before they're ready, and there's no point, right? What I want to do is I want to sort of ease into these conversations, because again, I don't think that the diversity issues in gaming are, the white man oppressing everybody else. No, because like I said, gaming's not a North American only phenomenon. It's not, British Commonwealth. It's everything. It's Japan. It's, Korea, Latin America. I'm sure there's a gaming sector in India. I just don't know very much about it. But, the South Asia, definitely. Like, there's people from all over the place that play games. And I think that once we sort of settle down and stop feeling like we're being blamed for what we recognize is an unnatural imbalance in the people being represented, then we can start listening, and then we can start going, yeah, okay, I see that. Because like I said, we all have that rejection in common. We all have that bad experiences. We all have that sense of not being wanted, and we all have that desire to find not just fun in gaming, but a community and friends with common interests. And I know that gaming is something that people still can't necessarily talk about in the rest of their world. So that's a more tender issue, and it is very stigmatized, and it is very, it'll rot your brain or turn it off. Or I went through all that too, my husband is very patient with me and my gaming. But then, I respect that too. And I understand that, okay, every so often I really need to turn off a video game and watch TV because he likes TV. And, so you watch TV for a couple hours a night. And I'll have my computer sitting on my lap and I'll be picking at something. But the point is I'm doing something he wants to do. And I wouldn't have that problem if there were more couch co-op games out there. Because we used to play games together, but that's becoming increasingly difficult to do. And no, I am not buying a second bloody Xbox to play in separate rooms. That's dumb. Anyway, I'm getting annoyed. But breathe. Okay. But yeah, I really do think that we can have these conversations and incorporate more and more and more people, because everybody wants new people to come into games, right? We want to share our hobby with an increasing number of people. And, I think the vast majority of people are just like, yeah, I really don't care about elements like race or gender or anything like that. Stop throwing them in my face. And I completely agree. It's just obviously something that there's another side to, and it's sort of the whole thing of, you guys do realize that every time there's like a game with no people, no diversity, then that's being thrown in our faces, and that's when we start getting freaked out and start getting itchy and feeling like we have mange. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. That's not what anybody is really saying. What they're really saying is like, I just want to turn. And I think we can understand that. And if we start understanding that that is going to make things better, and if we start understanding that, and we do understand this, a good character is a good character, a good game is a good game. I mean, did anybody like, the various Far Cries? Do you pick your favorite game based on the setting? Or do you pick your favorite game because of things like the story or the characters or things like that? You know? I think some people do get hung up on the politics of it, but most people, it's just like, this part was fun, so I liked it. And that's the great thing about games, is that it's not about, it's not like, film or TV where language is so important, although to a sense it is with localization. Like, dialogue for games is this unique challenge, because if you're doing everything in colloquialisms and idioms that can't be reproduced in other languages, you're going to have a bit of trouble with sort of that international audience. But other parts of games are international, and I think that if we focus on the fact that we do have more in common because we all like video games as entertainment, and less on what makes us different, we can incorporate those fairly minor differences in, like, no, I'm not going to say hummingbird, the badass symbiotes. Yeah, like, look, there are different colors of symbiotes, and this guy's yelling, and this guy's got his tongue out, and this one's jumping, and this one's got boobs, and, like, all this stuff can coexist in game. This one's hanging off the sign. I don't know what this means, but it's pretty awesome. We can have all of this at the same time. And then the people that like their hummingbird, that's fine. You can have your hummingbird, because that's the commensalism argument where, okay, somebody can go off and have their chill little cutesy pink non-violent games, and that makes them happy, it benefits them, and it don't affect me. That's cool, okay? Because I can really not see anyone giving up playing Halo to go play Candy Crush Sagas. People may play them both, but I can't see somebody quitting to do the other thing. It's not going to suck any sales out. It's not parasitic, guys. Like, it's not, that's the thing. It's not taking away from AAA games. It's just bringing people in. And that's good. And if one of the selling points to bring people into other games, like, think about it, okay? If someone comes into gaming because they see a character like them, and that's their first experience, they have a great first experience, they're going to look for something else to play, right? And eventually they'll step out of that thing that originally brought them in. Be it, I want to play as a woman, or I want to play as a non-white person, or whatever. Could you imagine somebody who's of the Baha'i faith? I won't play a game unless they're Baha'i. Like, no, right? But wouldn't that be funny? You'd be very disappointed. I mean, is there even a Baha'i character in any game? I don't know. But, eventually people step out of that comfort zone in terms of that identifier, because then they have another identifier. Then they're a gamer, and they find games are fun. And so once that person has got that validation, the same way we figured out that, gamers just wanted people to stop dumping on them and telling them they were bad, and gamers are really willing to listen when they don't think you're shitting on them. People coming into games, okay, no one's gonna pick on me for being different. Once they've established that, and once they've got that, then they're gonna be right in there with you. And that's what we have to do. And so I don't think there's any place for this, it's just bad across the board. I think it's important to point things out when there's a gap somewhere, or when there's an imbalance somewhere. But there's a big difference between taking a parasitic approach to criticism, which is, I'm going to make you miserable and give you diarrhea and vomiting and itchy skin and watery eyes and sneezing, and taking a more, mutual approach which is I want everyone to benefit here, which is why I'm pointing this out. I think it's very different. You know, it's sort of like, I love this game. I'd love it even more if, right? Now, there are some instances where a game is going to completely put someone off because of something you think was awful. I've had it happen. You know, there's just a point where I'm like, I can't take any more of this. It's driving me crazy. Too much button mashing in a game will make me give it up. Something like that. That's sort of like, no, it's okay to not like a game. Like, we're all gonna have games we don't like. But, you know, it's important to understand that that's when we get in to the commensalism where someone else can benefit from that game and it don't affect you. Okay? So to summarize, currently gaming is in this parasitic concept of diversity where the different sectors of gaming are seen as these different parasites ruining the gaming industry and the world. I suggest that diversity in gaming and the different groups of gamers is more like the hummingbird and the flower, or the antelope and the bird, and whatever this thing is on the antelope's stomach that might be a penis, and the clownfish and the sea anemone. You know, it's more like that. Or this fish thing. But really, in our minds, we're all badass symbiotes. Look at that. That is cool.